Welcome. Enjoy your magical marketing insights. Welcome to Content by Client Stage. So today we're going to chat through the stages of the client journey and the content for her that is really going to be the most valuable as she's going through that client journey. And really, when we think about the client journey and all of marketing in general, it's really about a relationship. It's about building and fostering that relationship. You probably know who I am, but very, very briefly, I'm 𝓜𝓪𝓰𝓲𝓬 and I help intuitive, heart-centered solopreneurs with niching, desire-based marketing and mindset, your content, your copywriting, how you speak to your aligned clients. And my background is in psychology and marketing. I have a master's in both, and I'm also a master NLP hypnotherapist and EFT practitioner. So today's conversation will be a really great way to hone and perfect the things that you already have working, and maybe make just some little tweaks and adjustments with anything that's not working. So my favorite analogy for this subject today is singing in the shower. Don't know if anyone else likes to do that, or in the car. And that versus getting up on stage and singing for an audience. So a lot of times in our businesses, we can be kind of inward biz focused, like looking at our results and looking at our performance and our metrics and our goals. And those things are fine, right? Absolutely nothing wrong there. But today we are stepping out of ourselves and out of that perspective and into the shoes of the people who are witnessing our content, the people that we are serving, the people that are our audience. And the reason that we're doing that is to make sure that what we're creating is engaging and effective for them. As much as I love to sing in the shower or the car, I'm sure my next door neighbors love it too. It's really not meant for an onstage audience. So we want our content to genuinely work for that real life audience. So we're laser focused today on her. And who is she? It is your niched, aligned client. This is somebody who has the desire for the outcome that you offer. And it's also, we're going to assume that we're talking about someone who's definitely interested in your work and somebody who will ultimately buy something from you or work with you in some way. So we're not focusing today on the people who are kind of following for fun, or they're like, supportive friends. These are people who are really interested in the outcome, and that's where their desire is. So this is their journey. And our process is desire-based. It's niched, and we are niching to that desire. So this type of niching, it's part of desire-based marketing, focusing in on her excitement for what she can have and who she can become, rather than trying to get her to experience fear or shame or emotional upset over where she is, or what's not going right for her now. So we're kind of showing her how she can expand her horizons and really grow into something that feels really exciting and really good to her, versus dialing up that ick, that she might be living in. So let's go ahead and briefly look at the stages of the client journey, and then we will talk about how to write to those stages. So I always like to start by saying, I don't do like hard and fast, cookie cutter, rigid rules, cut and paste types of things. I'm never going to give you like some rigid outline that you have to follow to the letter of the law to make it work. And so with the client journey, it's not necessarily linear. It's not like she goes from point A to point B and then point C, and it's like some perfectly straight line. Every client's journey is really unique. And you may have had the experience of someone going through a cycle where they've gotten to know you and then they buy from you, and then maybe they disappear for a while and then they come back and they buy from you again. So it could be a cycle. And so it's not a straight line, and it can take on different shapes. And it's not the same, for every client. There are some people who are going to find you today and book right in, and then there are some other people who will follow you for like 2 years and then decide that they're ready to work with you. So there's always a little bit of variety, and I just think it's important to kind of note that. And how that journey progresses depends on many things to do with that client. It's not just about us or our content, that does have a big sway in it, but it's not always just like, are we doing a good enough job with marketing? There's a lot of things happening in the lives of the people that are interested in our work or that have been interested. And their level of investment in the subject changes as things in their life shift. So there are lots and lots of variables that go well beyond what we are doing. And sometimes if, things aren't working, we're not making sales, or maybe not generating the interest that we want, we might like beat up on ourselves thinking we're not doing something right. But I think it's helpful to remember that, part of that is mindset, but we can kind of step out of ourselves and stay focused on the situation of the client. That's where we want to be. That's where we want to kind of exist today. Her life, her world, her situation. Because once we get that, then we can really create effective, engaging content. And keeping in mind that it's her journey. This is about her, experience with things. So we can kind of let go of any attachment to how they're making decisions or whether we're good at what we're doing. Like we keep doing our best, we keep doing our thing and use all of our best strategies and the tools that we know. And in the meantime, we can release any attachment to our client's choices that she may be making along her journey. So your content brings your aligned niche client through a process of education and increasing her insight. So we'll be talking today about levels of insight because, a lot of times we hear about like cold audience or hot or warm audience, and there's nothing wrong with that, but we're going to put a little bit of a different spin on some of these terms, and we're going to look at it through the lens of level of insight that she has about the issue and how that issue actually impacts her. So these stages are tied to her awareness of the issue and the level of education or insight with that issue, as well as like how well she knows us, the pathway from just meeting you today or encountering your work for the first time, all the way through until she takes that step to move closer towards working with you. So the 3 stages are, we have the attraction phase, which is the first one, and this is sometimes thought of as your cold audience. And then we have moving towards where she's becoming, quote unquote, warmer audience. And then the imagining stage, which is also sometimes called the readiness stage, where she's just about ready to book in with you. And this is often described as your hot audience. So as I explain like each thing, I'll also mention if there are sort of like generic marketing terminology too, just in case that's helpful for you to connect it into other things that you're learning about. So in the attraction phase, also known as the awareness phase, she's just beginning to have an awareness of that issue. She's slowly recognizing a problem that she's facing, something that's happening in her experience, and that initially draws her into your work. And it could be like the tiniest little spark, just enough to get her to read a post, and actually pay attention to something that you're saying. It might get her to look more closely, as she's scrolling. So she's brand new to your work. She may be brand new to the issue, or it may just be that she just hasn't had much opportunity to reflect on it or to learn about it. So you're kind of just getting introduced. And at this stage, her insight is very low. This person is often referred to as a cold audience because they don't know us yet. So it's like, cold, warm, hot, the temperature is cooler. But it is really more about that level of insight that's low, a low level of familiarity or education with the subject and with you. And then gradually over time, through that education, through that relationship building, she slowly begins to understand more, and then she gains more insight. She's being shown new things. She's being introduced to new information, and her insight deepens. So then she takes that step closer where she's warming up and she's moving towards you. So now she's kind of doing things like following you on Facebook or maybe watching some of your YouTube videos or whatever it is that you have going on for her. And this could happen very quickly. I know I found people and like fallen down a YouTube rabbit hole in like one night, or it could happen over a much longer stretch of time because everyone is different. So there will be a bucket of people that always just stay in the attraction phase, that your quote cold audience, they never progress any closer. But if she does continue to progress and develops more interest over time, then something is happening for her. She's not just signing up for things, she's actually watching the full video and maybe taking some notes and, actually reading your posts and getting involved with your content. And that's not everyone's, exact story. Maybe we've all had the experience of someone who never comments on anything and they just appear one day and they're your client. They just show up in your inbox. And I've done that, where I'm just quietly following someone and just poof, decide to book in with them. So that's why I say it's not a linear cookie cutter journey. It's unique to everyone. So she gets to the place where she's ready to take action and moves into the imagining phase or the readiness phase because she's becoming ready to work together to take that next step. So now she's close to doing something about this because you've helped her to understand why it matters, why it's important, and how it can be achieved. And you've shown her what's actually possible for her. She may have started this client journey thinking that it's hopeless. Or, it may feel like an impossible situation that she's given up on things. But because of your work, your content, you're kind of opening this window of possibility for her. And her worldview expands because of you. And so now she sees that she can step through that into something different. The desire has built, the insight has built, and now she's moving towards taking action. So that's kind of the overview of those stages, and we're going to go through them and talk about the types of content that are relevant to each client stage. But I think it's helpful to start with where we're putting our content and have a quick look at locations and different spaces that we may be showing up in. And I think it's important that I mention again that this is not a cookie cutter template situation. We're all unique in how we use our platforms. We use YouTube differently. We use Facebook differently. So every entrepreneur kind of manages these things differently. I'm a little bit more open in Facebook groups that are a little bit more private versus my public page, in terms of sharing about my family and stuff like that. So, but not everyone is like that, right? Some people are the opposite. So I think it's important to stress that the way you manage your locations may be different from me or from someone else, and there are no wrong answers. So if you would like to, it might be helpful. You don't have to do this. You can just kind of lay back and listen. But if you want to write any of it down, certainly this could be an opportunity to kind of jot down for yourself, where are all of the places that your content is going, right now and how you're using them. And then we'll kind of assess who's most likely to see that content in these various places. So let's just say you have a Facebook page and you have a website where you're posting your blog and maybe an email list. And it's all about kind of how you uniquely run your business with those different platforms, the places that you're showing up. And this includes your educational content, your conversational content, and also your promotional content. So thinking through where this person may encounter your work. And then once you have that, kind of identified, and this is something you can certainly go back and do later or add to it later. Once you kind of have that idea, thinking about what type of audience is most likely to see that content or those posts. There may be some overlap. So let's just take your Facebook page as an example. So you have a combination of people who just started following you and some people that have been your followers for a while. And, there are variables like algorithms and, things that are beyond our control. But in general, we can say that on our Facebook page, the people who are your followers already are seeing your posts in their newsfeed, right? So if they're already a follower, they've already liked your page, that's where they're likely to see that content, which is a little different than someone who's just found you. Maybe they found you in a Facebook group and they're peeping out your profile. We do that all the time, right? Or a mutual friend, and they're just kind of going to your page manually. And so they're starting at the top of your page and they're going to see your banner and all those little intro things that are up there. Or if you have a pinned post at the top, that person is more likely to be a little bit colder of an audience than someone that's already following you. And so that's something that I realized for myself recently. I needed to update something. I have like a free training if you click on my banner. And I realized like I needed to like say, hi, my name is, nice to meet you at the beginning of that opt-in page. And I didn't have that because I had set it up for people that already knew me. So these are the types of things that we can think through to create a really good experience for someone who may be just brand new to our work. And so as we're making this little list, column 1, platform, column 2, is it cold, warm, or hotter audience? You might have Facebook page followers, like your regular content separated from your banner and your little intro things that you have at the top. Those may be 2 different categories that are slightly different, in terms of how introductory the material needs to be. So we might actually label them differently. They might need a little bit of a like, hello, how are you? I'm Christine and this is what I do. And so we're thinking through this kind of strategically. And like I said, the answers may be different for each person based on how you use each platform. So you know your business the best, and you can just kind of think through who might be seeing you where. Same thing with your YouTube channel. The top of your YouTube page, there's actually differences in what they see if they land there the first time versus if they're a repeat visitor. So those are things that you might list out separately, like first time visitor versus repeat visitor. You may have someone who has like Googled a question that was then sent to one of your YouTube videos where you've put that keyword, and we'll chat a little bit, about keywords today too. If they're on your email list, they're not a perfectly cold audience anymore. They've signed up for something. So they know a little something about you and they're interested at some level. When it comes to spaces like your website and your blogs, you can consider, do you have your website SEO'd? And I'm talking about search engine optimization. That way someone who's searching for something that's related to what you do, they may come across your website. That is going to most likely be a very cold audience with a low level of insight because they're just beginning to find you for the first time. So they don't know anything about you or your work yet. And if you are using keywords in your website and in your blogs and that sort of thing, then someone who's cold Googling are more likely to come across your work. We could say that hypothetically people in Facebook groups are a warmer audience because of how the algorithm works. So if they're seeing your posts, it's probably because you've interacted before in the group, or there are some mutual friends or mutual contacts. So there's usually some level of familiarity there. So making a note of column 1, this is where my content shows up. And column 2, I think that this is, likely colder or warmer or hotter audience. And of course, you can update this as we go through our conversation today. So breaking down the client stages and looking at the types of content for each one based on where she is in her journey. So in the attraction or awareness stage, this is your quote unquote coldest audience. So lowest level of insight, lowest level of familiarity with you and your work. She's just getting an understanding of the situation. So we could ask ourselves, like, what does she need from us here? Like, what is it that this person might be thinking and feeling as she's gaining this awareness? This is someone who doesn't really know us yet or doesn't have a lot of insight in the subject. So we probably want to have some type of introduction. Hi, my name is, and this is what I do, and this is how I help people. And also in the way that we speak about the issue, it's more of like, oh, have you heard of blank? Or let me explain this. Let me tell you a little something about this because she's new to this. And if she's just noticed this issue or just become aware of it, like, what is she thinking? How might she be feeling? How does she define it? What does she believe is needed? That could be very different, versus someone who's been following you for a while. So hypothetically, if someone's like cold Googling and comes across your website using that, that SEO, those keywords that are embedded in there can be really useful if we have good insight ourselves into how she's describing things, because they're typing something into Google based on their level of knowledge, which is low. when they're new to this. So they don't have that education. And most importantly, they don't know lingo. So they're going to talk about it in their own words. And this is where it can be so useful for us to get an understanding of her experience as that awareness is growing, paying attention to how she describes things. That's one reason why we do things like avatar interviews, or even reflecting back on our own journey if we've been on this journey at some point. I like to think about it as she's just going out to coffee with a friend. Like, how does she describe what's going on? If she feels comfortable with this friend to tell her, she's probably not going to coffee with a friend and saying, oh my gosh, I think I'm codependent. Right? I mean, maybe if she's like, a psych major or something, or has a friend that is, but generally speaking, people are describing their problems in everyday terms. Like, my partner did blank, and then I did blank, and then this is what happened, and this is what I experienced. And it's so important that I think, all of us are an expert in something, right? And we have to kind of tease that apart from that everyday experience of the client, because a lot of times, and this happens to me too, we're not even aware that we have that filter. There's a lens that we're looking through, and it can be very different from the lens that she's looking through. One of my fun examples of this is back in the day, I was a therapist, and I worked in that industry for many years and spent plenty of time in rooms full of other therapists, and would have to get together and like do case consults where we like chat through, client situations and stuff. And you'd hear just in that room full of therapists, you'd hear things like, oh, she's just completely histrionic, or, this one's displaying clear signs of borderline personality disorder or Munchausen's, and all of these, things that someone just sitting in that room would be like, what are they even talking about? And just as a side note, I'm not a fan of labels. I think it can be a bit dehumanizing, so please don't take that as like my condoning of that sort of thing. But you do hear lingo, and it's related to the industry and your area of expertise. And these are things that the average person would not understand. Sometimes these terms make their way into pop culture, but the people that are throwing them around don't necessarily understand what they really mean anyway. And so as you being the expert, whatever it looks like in your realm, maybe it's technology, maybe like tech heavy words, like you can speak in HTML, or if you're a designer, all the ins and outs of the colors and the hues and the color wheel, or you can speak in hashtag color codes. We have to kind of catch ourselves to not use that in a way that might confuse someone. I do that for myself with NLP. It's very easy to, to slip into terminology. So when we're speaking to that colder audience, that person with a low level of insight, they don't know those things. And so our keywords, we have to make sure our keywords are attracting someone in the language that they would actually use. We have to kind of water it down to how they would describe it to a friend. So she's not saying I'm codependent. She's saying my partner is a jerk, or, something like that. She's talking about it in her own words. And something has begun to happen for this client at this stage. Her feelers are up now, where something's happened with her computer or her partner or her kids or her health. And we want to ask ourselves, what is she thinking? What is she feeling? She's going to need from your content to slowly learn and understand it better. But first, we have to connect with her before we can start that education process. So you can do avatar interviews. You can think back through your own journey if you went through this yourself, or you can visualize this as the client, imagining her situation. What is her day like when she wakes up in the morning? Where does this show up for her in her life? Is it when she sits down to work or sits down to eat? You can use that visualization to gain that little deeper insight. And thinking specifically about types of content, our goal here is to attract her, to get her attention, to kind of help to bring her into the fold, so that we can get to a space where we can give her, some education and some insight. But before we can tell her anything or say a word to her, she has to be attracted in. And so that's really important before we can have that deeper conversation. It's kind of like that coffee date, like in the dating realm before the going out to dinner. It's not the big fancy 3-hour meal yet. This is just like maybe a speed dating session, like short and lightweight. And it's an opportunity to make a quick connection, to see if there's a match, to see if it's a good fit. And, generally we wouldn't go into, like super deep, heavy stuff on a first date. We want to capture her attention and find things that are relatable and connect in with her. She may just be scrolling very quickly, looking at multiple things on social media, or if she's doing a Google search, she may be scanning, multiple Google results. So we have, really just a few seconds to make that initial connection with her. So the goal is finding commonalities, finding like relatable things that develop a relationship. It's very early days. And we can find ways to excite her, engage her, and attract her without going too heavy and too deep. So again, that's just a general suggestion. Doesn't mean that it's never appropriate or relevant to go to deeper levels in the attraction phase. But we're looking for things like funny, engaging stories. Everybody loves a good story, and it could relate to your work or not. It could just be like a purely getting to know you type of thing. Those are great opportunities. Stories are really never wrong with any stage. Everybody loves stories. You could also share something that is relevant to your work without it being about the work, the deeper stuff. Like I like to talk about my Hello Kitty stickers that motivate me to accomplish things. And a lot of people can relate to that, even if they don't give two poops about content. They can relate to that on a human level. So there's a little bit of storytelling, and also things that are relevant to her, like kind of what's in it for her, interesting to her, entertaining to her, that as she's scrolling, whatever kind of day she's having, you're giving her something. And the focus is on capturing attention and then talking about an experience that she can really relate to, where she recognizes herself in your content. She realizes you're talking about something that matters to her. You're kind of, selling it a little bit as far as why she should care, that little bit of background or context to stop the scroll. Why she should read this or watch this or pay attention to this thing that you're talking about here. And so one other way we can do that is to paint a picture of her situation or her life using the most concrete, tangible things that you can. Sometimes we can talk in really abstract language because we know stuff, it's so familiar to us, but it can come across as a little bit vague. And the more detailed and specific you can be as you're describing her situation, like she's sitting down at her desk and blank, something happens to her website, or she's staring at a blinking cursor, or she's having a conflict with someone in her life. So what is that tangible experience that you can describe for her? And what are some of the relatable stories about it? You could share about your own personal journey if that's relevant, or something from pop culture that's a good analogy, something from a movie, for example, a reference that a lot of people would be able to understand. So I have what I call the pop psychology version of things. And what I mean by that is that when I was getting my master's in psych, we had to do a lot of very heavy research, and it had to be very scientific, with citations and peer-reviewed articles and all that sort of thing. And it was a little bit of a joke that there would be a magazine that had the word psychology in it, but essentially it was nothing more than pop culture stuff. It was not research-based at all. It would be loosely connected to the realm of psychology, but it was basically just attractive to a broader culture. And so we dubbed it pop psychology, because it would be interesting to a broad audience. It didn't go very deep. It didn't present a lot of facts and research. It was just kind of fun, the fun side of it. It's kind of catchy, to a colder audience, to where she might be drawn in just a little bit and then eventually want to go deeper. Another option, you may have heard of the concept of listicles or listlets, like the top 10 signs that you're blank, or the top 5 indicators indicators that you need to do blank, like top 5 indicators you need to update your website, or you need to feng shui your living room, or top 5 signs you need to organize your file storage, update your content strategy. I haven't done that one yet, so maybe I should. It's kind of like the enticing, juicy, poppy, catchy little things for a colder audience that might intrigue someone who's in the attraction stage. She's not yet familiar with how amazing you are and how amazing your deeper work is. So we are just kind of engaging her at that stage. And now over time, as she's been drawn in, becoming part of your realm, as I like to think of it, she's reading your blogs. She's becoming educated by your work. She's deepening her insight. She's following you on socials. She has stepped into the moving towards phase. So what does that look like for her? Well, as she starts to gain some interest, she has developed her insight. She's actually reading things, not just scrolling. She's probably following you. She's probably getting your newsletter. I would say if she's on your email list, she's probably stepped into the moving towards stage. And she's learning something about the issue or about herself. And this is your quote, warm audience. So now, how does the problem look and feel to her? And what is her experience like now as she begins to understand it more? Maybe there's a few things that you've already helped her solve, surface level things you've helped her with some of your free content. And it may be that she's been on your email list for a while, or coming to your webinars or your challenges, or grabbing all your freebies. And so for this group of people that have been your followers, we can kind of slowly adjust a little bit, the way that we communicate with them, right? You have people in every stage of the client journey in all of your platforms. So it's not like, cold audience is only here, so we have to kind of just think through this, like, how can we encompass everyone in what we're creating and what we're sharing. So in terms of content, really getting tangible and specific for this moving towards stage, what does she need from you now? Well, maybe there are some everyday practical tips that are like a step further down from that pop psychology, surface level thing. Maybe there are some little experiences that you can give her, some aha moments, where you reveal something that she'd never heard of before or didn't know before. Little suggestions, little tricks and tips that she can benefit from, because now she's in a place where she's actually willing to do the thing, right? Like if she's in the cold, attraction stage, she's just meeting you and you're like, hey, try this, to clean up your living room. She's going to be like, yeah, cool, keep scrolling. If she's in the moving towards stage though, she's actually going to try that. She's actually going to try it for herself and see if it helps her. So she's seeing those little suggestions that you're putting out there, and she's reached that place where she believes in what you're saying, and she believes in it enough to actually give it a go. Here are 5 things you can do to improve this situation today, or, the top 10 things you could do to make your home more feng shui friendly. It's something that's very digestible still, and it's very easy for her to take it on, but it's a little bit deeper than the hello, nice to meet you stage. And the deeper she's gotten in with you, the deeper you can go with your content and your education. And that's important because the way that you're designing your content, it is usually from more than one location. It's rare that we're just purely posting to a cold audience or purely posting to a warm or hot audience, unless you're talking about people that are in your group membership, or something like that. So you can kind of decide how to incorporate little nudges like these into your existing content. This is not about reinventing the wheel. This is just maybe there's one little tidbit I would add that would be engaging for a colder audience, or in this case, a warmer audience. You can add introductory elements into the spaces where people are most likely to be brand new. And then the deeper material for the spaces where they've gotten to know something about you and they're pretty interested. So now the real world instances of the problem for her have deepened, and maybe now you can start to shed light on the true problem versus the perceived problem. So when she first found you, she thought that what was going wrong for her was X and that she just needed Y to solve it. And now she's starting to understand it's a little bit more about this, and, it's a little bit deeper than that. It's a little bit more nuanced than, what I initially thought. So there may be like some solid and convincing research related to the issue that can back up what you're saying. This gives you a great opportunity to demonstrate some of your expertise in the subject and your knowledge. And it's a great time for also deepening that trust and that relationship so that she can continue to progress to the next level with her. And as you go deeper, bringing in more of the education, she's there for a reason. She signed up to something because she wants to learn something from you. She wants to hear about something from you. And she's genuinely interested, and you can also decide if you want to share about yourself and be a little bit vulnerable. Of course, that's up to you. It's kind of like we're the leader in the relationship. So we have to go first. We have to open up and be vulnerable first. And that really can help to kind of foster that sense of trust and to develop that relationship further. So now in the imagining stage, this is the final stage before she books in with you. And she's gotten to a place where now she has a lot of insight. And she's gained insight into the issue as well as into herself. She's gotten to know you more. And now she's at a place where she's ready to do something about it. She's learned from you. She's enhanced her insight. And she understands why it's so important. And also how this looks like where your expertise is actually really valuable to her. So she's probably been on your email list for a while, coming to your things, signing up for things, following you on socials, whatever that looks like for her. It's going to be unique to this client where she feels the most comfortable following you. And she's developed that much more insight where now that she understands the issue, she's starting to realize that she does want to take action. There's something more that she wants to solve or improve for herself. So what are some indications that she's becoming ready for your support? Like what's different in this stage of the journey? So one big indication is that her actual desire may have changed. This is huge. It may have deepened. Like when she first found you, she was thinking she really wants to lose 20 pounds in 5 days to attend an event, or she wants to expand her social media reach by tenfold with no insight into strategy or anything like that, or she thinks that one certain type of automation is going to completely solve her business and triple her sales by itself with like no effort from her, right? Those were the kinds of things that maybe she desired early on because she had a low insight into what the problem really was, what was actually realistic. And now, after following you for a while, listening to the things you had to share, she's starting to realize that her actual goal is it's now to eat healthy food so that her body feels really good and she can have more longevity in her life. Or she maybe now wants to SEO her website and write better copy and maybe have better branding and graphics in a strategic way, because she also realizes that it's not like a one solution fixes everything, type thing. She realizes that Trello won't fix every problem in her business. She actually needs to reorganize her back-end processes a little bit. So her desire is deeper and it's more informed and it's more realistic. So we can say that this is an informed desire because it has developed through increasing her insight over time. And her actual expectations in working with you are more realistic, which is great. That's exactly what we want because she's been educated over time and now she has a clearer understanding of what's actually possible and what will actually work for her. And she may also have increased her belief in what is possible. Like when she first found you, she may have been really hopeless, feeling like I just have no idea what to do, just kind of throw up my hands, and she didn't really have any understanding about the issue. So now her beliefs in the possibility of improvement have happened, because of better understanding the situation through your content and through your work. So your consistency really matters here. because if she sees you consistently talking about these things and what you know, kind of developing that awareness with her, that's important because she may not be an overnight insight person where she sees it once and boom, she gets it. Most of us aren't. You know, most of the time we have to see something multiple times to actually increase our insight and increase our understanding. And she might even need, you know, several months to increase her level of insight and kind of update those expectations and desires. And her ability to imagine in this stage what it would be like to work with you is really important. And not just to work on the issue, but to work with you specifically. So in the imagining phase, we want her to begin visualizing what it would look like and feel like to work together. So she's thinking, if I sign up with this person, if I get on a Zoom call with them, what will that be like? You know, what's their personality like? You know, and so you can demonstrate that with videos and trainings and freebies where they get a taste of your personality, like live streams or challenges or pre-recorded videos that kind of bring that personality to life so that she can get a taste of what one-on-one work might feel like. You can also offer free one-on-ones, you know, if that's in your realm, that's what you'd like to do. And you can also, another thing I think is helpful here, to think about yourself as the client. So think about someone you've signed up to work with that, you know, you went through this journey, this client journey with, and kind of make a note of like, okay, well, how did I find them? What was my experience like with their content? Like, did I start following them on Facebook? And then what happened? And then what happened? And then what happened? And what was your own client journey like? You know, ideally it's a practitioner or somebody who does a similar model to the same type of work as what you do. And then just kind of reflecting on that. You can also do it in the reverse, you know, someone you ultimately chose not to work with, what things kind of turned you off, you know, and pay attention to that and make note of that. Because this can be really helpful if you're not able to connect with like an avatar client or someone, you know, that could become a real client. You can use yourself sometimes, you know, as an example. And then as far as content for this imagining stage, she's become familiar with you and your work, and she's really, really interested now in what you have to say. She's been reading all the material and really engaging with it. She might even be peeking at booking links, you know, without actually taking that step yet. And so this is a much smaller group. This is your hot audience, as it's sometimes called, but there's a high level of insight here. And so offering her the opportunity to see what it's like to work with you, and we can do that through freebies and taste tests. And there are a lot of ways to do that. You know, we talked about videos being good because it feels like you're talking to her and she can kind of feel like she's getting to know you. But you can also offer other types of taste tests depending on, you know, what type of work you do. Like if you have a course or a membership, you know, you can offer a 30-day trial or a 7-day trial, you know, whatever that would look like for the service that you offer. And it may help her to make a better informed decision and get a real taste of like stepping into that experience. Like, oh, this is what it's like to be a member of that thing or to work with this person. Yes, I want more of that. You know, she's like on the brink of being ready to buy. It's a very powerful thing helping her get across that little final decision and to make it a really feel-good decision that it's right for her. And so you can kind of think through like, you know, what your offer is, whether that's one-on-one work or a course or a group program, and consider what a taste test might feel like, you know, or look like. So just as an example, I have a 30-day taste test of the 𝓜𝓪𝓰𝓲𝓷, and I will say that that is by far my highest converting opportunity that I have. It leads directly into my monthly $5 𝓜𝓪𝓰𝓲𝓷 membership. And I think what happens is that people get to directly experience what it's like having that constant support from me through the 𝓜𝓪𝓰𝓲𝓷 and seeing how magical it is having in their life, you know, day in and day out. And it's 30 days. So it's a nice long chunk of time to really experience it. And once they do, you know, oftentimes they want to keep it. They've incorporated into their life and they really like it. And I made sure that it's also like a no-brainer price. So it's easy for them to decide that that's a good choice for them. It's easy to feel that desire and also have the capacity to stay. It's not some crazy amount that they have to try to figure out, how to make that work. And so there are lots of ways to do this with other types of services and products. And also another way to make it tangible is to help her to kind of step into what that might feel like. So another example, somebody that I ultimately did decide to work with, I was watching an interview with this person where they described their client process and all of the things that they do for like their VIP clients. And this person did such a good job describing like how special you feel and how much work she puts in for you. And it was like, oh, I've got to have that. I really want to experience that. So that's another way, having that like interview kind of back and forth conversation where you're talking about what you do for your clients, and it doesn't have to be an interview. You could do that, just on your own, describing that. So what can she expect after working with you? What are some things that she might notice in her life? And we want to speak to that in our content and in particular in our copy. And I think a lot of times we're encouraged heavily to focus on outcomes that are things like, you'll make more money, and there's nothing wrong with that, just to be clear. Everybody likes that one. But I also think that it's important not to ignore the emotional outcomes of the work that you do. Even if the goal is to make more money or something, equally tangible and very measurable, how is she going to feel about that? About that experience, because that's equally important. It's not just this is going to happen. It's I'm going to experience a sense of satisfaction. Or if I do this work about, like EFT tapping on something to do with confidence, I'm going to experience the confidence to get on camera, or whatever that looks like that's relevant to your work, and being as specific as you can. So not just saying you're going to feel better, but, what do you mean by better? What does that actually look like and feel like for the client? And then the last piece I want to just say on this is to make it so easy for her in the booking process to pay you or to purchase from you, whatever that looks like for you. We've all done all this work to guide her through this client journey. We've poured ourselves into this incredibly valuable content, supporting her through education and all of the relationship building and the fantastic promotional offers. And yes, now she's ready. She's excited. She can't wait to pay you, but she can't find the booking link or the button, whatever it is. So just make that super easy for her. She might be like in the waiting room at her doctor's office, like doing it real quick in the 5 minutes that she has. So we want it to be as simple as possible. So one thing I always recommend is to go through the sites yourself as a client, whether that's through Acuity or your website or whatever. Just go through that as a client and double check quickly that it's super, super easy to figure out, to book in, to buy. That's super easy to find that button if it's on your website. She doesn't have to scroll, 8 times to find it. We're also mindful, I think, of like not being salesy, but there are some people that are coming to our website just to book in. Like that's why they're there. They have 5 minutes and they're ready to pay you. I'm the type of person that I'm determined enough. If I want to work with someone, I'll scroll the 8 times. Like I'll look for it. But I'm also a shy buyer. And I don't like to email someone and say, I can't figure this out. And I know that there's a lot of other people like me that don't want to have to ask. So if possible, just try to make that process as intuitive and easy for her as possible. And then this is just kind of a quickie summary of things we talked through, speaking to her desires. We want to use positive messaging that's desire-based, toward motivated, information that's relevant to the level of the relationship we have, wherever she is at the stage of the journey. And then there's a few other things here, like using tangible descriptions to capture her experience, avoiding vague language that doesn't mean anything to her, painting that picture for her, using language she'll resonate with. So if we're looking into like SEO and keywords, making sure that the SEO that we do is relevant to the stage of the journey and the language that she's likely to use. And also attuning to differences in buyer styles and personas. Now, we didn't go into this heavily, we just touched on it today, but we mentioned that there are some people who will see your work once and be ready to jump. And then there are other people, usually a much larger group, that needs to build the relationship over time, over an extended period, and they need to consistently see your content, or they need to think about it and reflect on it, and they need that time. Some people need to talk with someone else. Some people need to see testimonials. So we have all these different, buyer personas. And then it's really important that you take care of your mindset. That can be just as important and powerful as all of your beautiful strategy that you have. And you want your marketing work to be sustainable, something that actually feels easy to manage and doesn't feel like this crazy, complicated process, to manage. So I created this as kind of like an overview of some of the key facets that I think really feed into engaging and effective marketing. And, some of that we could go a little bit deeper with, but we don't have time today. So if you are interested in going to that next level, having a little bit more support in those areas, I have a really fun self-paced program called Magic in Creation, and it is designed for intuitive solopreneurs who do their own marketing. And in that program, we go a little bit deeper on how do we captivate and attract that aligned niche client and craft our content in a way that, first of all, it's super easy for you. It's really sustainable. It doesn't feel hard. It doesn't make you crazy. And two, your marketing is effective. It has to work. You're putting your time and your energy into this, so it needs to be doing the job of attracting in the client and guiding her through this client journey. So there are really clear and tangible things you can do that are super easy. They don't require special knowledge. You can incorporate a little bit of basic SEO to your website and your blogs using those keywords, and there's more on that in Magic in Creation. And there's also some fun bits around like your client's psyche and your psyche and those buyer personas, that we talked about, like really understanding what different people need in order to feel safe to make a purchase. And that's really quite important. I see it overlooked a lot. If you are fuzzy at all on your niche, you'll have a lot more clarity afterwards. There's some really good niching support in this program, and using language that's desire-based, inclusive, and attracting her through high vibe methods, and also making room for intuition in your strategy. And I made sure that it's really digestible, really bite-sized. So there's 7 lessons, and there's not a single part of it that's more than 20 minutes, because I understand the neuroscience. We need things broken down. And I also understand that some people are visual learners. So there's a video and a full transcript for every single part here. There's also an array of mindset tools. So you probably know I'm an EFT practitioner and a master hypnotherapist. So you also get a hypnosis audio bundled in there. There's also EFT tapping videos. So it's kind of like this whole array of like strategy and mindset all kind of married together. And the early birdie price for the program, it's $197 US. It will eventually be $297, but for right now, it's at the $197 price. And in addition to getting lifetime access to the program as a student, that's all the materials and the hypnosis, you also will right now get a 3-pack of Messenger one-on-one check-ins with me. And that bundle, like outside of the early birdie thing, would be $285 US. So it's a pretty sweet deal. And with the Messenger check-ins, this is a new service that I'm offering. It's communicating via chat through my Facebook page, where we can talk about anything you want related to your marketing. It is asynchronous back and forth, which is really nice because you don't have to like show up with bells on at a certain time. You can just kind of lazily send me a message when you have a question. And you can also use your check-ins for copy review. So if you have like some promotional copy and you'd like my feedback on it, you can submit up to 200 words as your check-in, and I'll offer you feedback and suggestions. And those check-ins on their own are normally $88 US, but they're essentially free because they're bundled into this Magic in Creation early birdie offer. There's no like rush pressure on the early birdie thing. You have a whole month to decide. I don't like doing like you have 5 days to figure this out situation. And remember, you can get your special prize just by sending me an email to Christine@transformcreate.com and just ask me any question about today's webinar. And then I'm going to enter you into the grand prize drawing. So I will wrap up by saying I really appreciate you coming along today. This has been really, really fun for me, and I really hope that you have gained some valuable insight that you can put to good use right away. And whether or not our adventure continues beyond this today, I really enjoyed spending the time with you. I wish you an absolutely magical and creative rest of your day. Thanks for listening. This is Christine Collins at transformcreate.com.